to the second module of EMI-TA training for the Faculty of Science and Engineering. In this video, we will talk about the diversity and inclusivity in STEM education. As a globally esteemed university, NTU comes with a very diverse student body that includes students from very different cultures, genders, academic backgrounds, and experiences. This diversity is particularly pronounced in the classroom STEM subject. In this video, we're going to discuss the following aspects of diversity. Firstly, we'll talk about how to identify potential challenges associated with diversity in a STEM classroom. Secondly, we'll talk about as a TA, as a teaching assistant, how do you effectively address these challenges? Last but not least, we will explore some strategies to include students from different backgrounds in the classroom. To begin with, I would like to start with a very famous quote, which is also supported by many research. The quote says that an internationalized learning environment at university does not necessarily need to intercultural learning. So what does that sentence mean? It means that even with a unified medium instruction, in our case it means EMI instruction, it is not enough to establish an effective learning environment for students of diverse background. If we do not address this diversity in the classroom, it may lead to, for example, isolation of certain groups of students in the classroom. It may determine hierarchical position in the groups, and in the worst scenario, it may even induce psychological issue of academically lower performing groups. So in this part, we would like to make some suggestions on how to address these issues. Let me begin with something that you should not do. What not to do? 1. Avoid implicit expectation. For example, do not assume all students are familiar with the type of activities, project, examination because their previous experience may be different. Also, do not assume every student possesses an identical level of proficiency in the prerequisite knowledge of the course. To avoid this from happening, we have some tips for you. Tip number 1. Provide instruction in both written and oral form to make sure that all students understand them and can refer to them later. Secondly, be clear and explicit in the prerequisite knowledge. Provide references if necessary. Last but not least, whenever it's possible, provide examples or templates of previous activities, exams, or projects that were successful as models. What not to do? Part 2. Avoid stereotyping. Do not stereotype students into categories based on their academic, cultural backgrounds, or genders. I understand it's very easy to generalize about certain group of students when you have had so many of them in the past. However, it's very important to remember that each student himself or herself is an individual, and they should be treated differently. To avoid stereotyping, we have some tips for you. So instead of stereotyping students, try to determine exactly why certain group of students are behaving in a certain manner. And more importantly, be mindful about your language. Avoid making assumptions about students based on their gender, nationality, education level in your verbal interaction and written communication. So, as a TA, what can we do in the classroom? Before I share any tips with you, we should bear in mind that in an EMI classroom, you should maintain an appropriate speed of information assimilation. Do not go too fast or too slow. Secondly, understand the burden for students in learning through a second language, so be understanding. Here are some tips that you can follow. Firstly, while we understand you shouldn't drop the standard of the course because of the student background, but you can always differentiate your materials such that they appeal to a wider audience, and they activate a varied schema when still directed to an appropriate academic level. Secondly, encourage students to present their range of prior knowledge. For example, you may invite students to do a diagnostic test before the semester begins to assess their background knowledge. Thirdly, provide a list of grading and assessment criteria and give a concrete example of written feedback so that students know on what aspect their work are going to get evaluated and how you will present it. When you present the feedback, please be explicit in your comments and give constructive feedback. Identify precisely what kind of errors students have made in their work. Appreciate the attempt of the student, even if it's not perfect. If possible, direct students to the correct approach from their respective incomplete approach. Please avoid using empty words such as good, bad, correct, or wrong. Avoid personal evaluation, no matter they're complimentary or not. Whenever you give feedback, be constructive and be concrete. On the next page, I've attached a sample of a grading scheme of homework from one of my previous calculus class. In the grading scheme, you see that we make it very clear what kind of mark student will get depending on what kind of mistake or what level mistake they're making. As a TA in the classroom, you should avoid implicit expectations on students, avoid generalization and stereotyping, differentiate your materials that appeal to a wider audience, conduct a survey ideally in the beginning of the semester to assess student prior knowledge. Last but not least, give explicit and constructive feedback. We hope that by following these guidelines, then you can also address the diversity in your classroom. In the final session, we would like to make some suggestions on how you can include students of different backgrounds in the classroom. Tip number 1. Check the student understanding of a task on a regular basis. For example, you may ask students to complete and submit a progress report on which you can provide feedback on. Indeed, progress reports have been proven to be a very effective method in assessing how students are managing the course so far, and more importantly, it can help identify issues that are common to many students at early stage. Indeed, this method has been used in the online course pre-calculus at NTU for many years. According to the student feedback on the progress report, you may consider to adjust the pace and the pitch of your class. Tip number 3. Encourage students to seek and provide each other with feedback and listen each other's feedback. You may consider to implement a buddy system where students can work in diverse pairs and support each other throughout the learning process. Where possible, spend time on ice-breaking activities during the first session. You could put students in small groups that are diverse in order to do a quick topic knowledge share. In this way, it's more likely that more students will start the course with the same foundational knowledge, and in the course of achieving that, they will also learn how to negotiate information in different ways. Last but not least, remember as a TA, you're not alone. If you discover any issues that's beyond your control, remember there are different departments in the university that can help you. So we have the Academic Counseling Service at NTU. They provide one-to-one academic support from senior students on general subjects. We have also Student Counseling Center that provide individual or group counseling. Last but not least is your course instructor. You should inform the instructor promptly if you identify any irregularities, either academically or non-academically, from a student or from a group of students. Let me do a little wrap-up. Promoting inclusivity in the classroom is important at university. This is because students from various backgrounds will feel valued and empowered, leading to a more positive and supportive learning environment. An inclusive classroom promotes empathy and cultural competence, preparing our students for a globalized world where collaboration across diverse teams is essential. An inclusive environment improves the learning experience of students of different cultural groups, genders, and academic background. Promoting inclusivity equips students with the essential skill for navigating a pluralistic society and contributing to a more tolerant and interconnected world. Thank you very much. This is the end of this module. Bye bye.